A lot of Roblox games are genuinely terrible. Now, you probably agree with me, right? You might have that one game in mind where you're like, oh no, but actually that game is good, but okay, like it might suck, let's be honest. But like all Roblox games tend to be garbage. Do you know why? Because I'm a pro gamer, so like I know, right? They're garbage because they try to do something by themselves, right? They don't try to just take a popular game's idea and mimic it well, right? Because like some games do mimic other games, but they just do it in a terrible way and then the game just flops. So the answer is just to steal from other games. Now obviously we don't want to get, hit for like copyright infringement or whatever, right? But like if you're someone who's making a game, or even not, maybe you're just someone interested in the whole idea, right? What could we steal from a game? Like what Roblox game could we make that takes, quote unquote inspiration from some other game that hasn't been done yet? Or maybe not hasn't been done, but like hasn't been done well. I'm sure with the amount of games that Roblox has, I'm sure that every single game in existence has been copied in one way or another. But I don't know, I was just thinking, and it's like, Splatoon? I've never played Splatoon. I don't even know really what the game is about. All I know is that like there's a ground, and then you can walk on the ground, and then you like color the ground, and like when you get more color than the other team, you win or something. And so I just got really curious and just started to wonder like, how easy would it be, and how quickly could I make a Splatoon-inspired Roblox game? And yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I'm gonna do, right? I'm gonna take the concept of Splatoon, I'm gonna take what made it work, hopefully. Again, I've never played the game, so I might not be the right person for this. And yeah, I'll just make the game, but in Roblox. First thing, we need to understand, what are we actually doing? Like, what is the step-by-step process? Because, all of you, little losers need step-by-step processes, unlike me who can think everything up on the spot. I'm just doing this for you because I'm very smart, obviously. But we need a step-by-step process to understand, okay, how do we make this actual game? Well, basically what I'm thinking of is, number one, we need a ground that's composed of these parts, right? And so whenever then the player steps on this part, we can get like, okay, when the part gets touched by the player, we set its color to be whatever color that the player is on, right? And then, from there, that's when we can, do calculations, be like, oh, how much of the parts are colored, what's like the percentage, who wins. We could do all of that a bit later. But right now, what we actually need to do is to basically make a ground that's composed of these Roblox parts. And, I guess I could duplicate this part and then move it here and then duplicate them and then move this here. And I could keep doing this, right? But the thing is, what if you just want a way to basically just make it do it automatically, right? Like maybe for some levels you want like a smaller ground, or maybe for some levels you want like a bigger ground. Like how can you just make a system that is just automatically gonna move all of these parts? And so this is exactly what I'm gonna do, right? I'm thinking that I want the parts to kind of move out in this direction. Like for example, if this is the part, and if I'm gonna start scripting, and cloning this part, what I'm thinking we do is we just take this part, we clone another part and move it over here, then we clone that part and then move it over there, and then we just keep cloning the parts until we're done, and then we take all of those parts and then make clones of them, but in this direction. Did anything that I just say make sense? Probably not, but that is good because you are here to learn, I'm pretty sure. So okay, important thing, make sure that it actually faces forward like so, okay? It has to face forward because that is very important. The very first thing we need to understand is if I want to move the parts to this direction, what axis is that? And is it positive or negative, right? So these arrows are red, which signifies an x-axis. But the question is this direction positive or negative, right? Because you can have a positive x and you can have a negative x. And this actually is very easy to tell because I have this little cube thing, which tells me that this line is x, meaning that this direction, as in the left, is a positive x. So moving in the right is negative x. And so because I want to move this part to the right, then that means we have to basically subtract from the x axis of this part. I know I might be making very, very little sense here, but just hear me out, okay? Let's just quickly do this. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a variable for the part. Okay, so local part is equal to workspace, wait for child, part, like so. Then I'll say, I'll do a loop, okay? I'll say for I equals 1, comma 9, okay? So basically we're just gonna create a loop that will run itself 9 times, okay? And so let's do this real quick, okay? Let's make a new part. So local new part is equal to parts clone, okay? Then what we're gonna do is I'm gonna set the new parts dot position, right? And we're gonna subtract from the parts position vector3 dot new, which is just an x, y, and z value. And again, just remember, we're trying to subtract, right, the x-axis, because whenever we subtract the x-axis, it moves it in this direction, right? And so the thing is, I want it to move exactly to a place where it's going to be touching another part. So let's say we clone the part. I want it to move here just so it like perfectly collides with this part. I don't want it to be here or like here. I want it to be like exactly here. Or in other words, I wanted to move the length of the part, right? So however long this part is, I wanted to move that distance. So really all we gotta do is just for the x, because that's the first number, because we're subtracting, I can just say parts.position parts.size.x, and then 0 for the y and 0 for the z, because we're not changing those axes. And I think that's effectively it. Then we just say new parts.parent is equal to workspace. And if I run the game right now, what happens? Okay, so small issue. It's making the parts, which is good, but clearly it's not making them properly. Like it made the first part, but then it just keeps stacking the parts on top of one another. Not only that, but like all of the parts are just here together, which makes it very cluttery. So I'm thinking we can just make a quick folder for them, and we can just call this parts. And another thing too is that this part also should be anchored. And another thing I've noticed is that when all of the parts were summoned, they kind of like wobbled a bit, which we don't want. We want these parts to just stay in one spot, not be affected by physics or whatever, so we can just set anchored to be true. But okay, what's the problem? The problem here is that whenever we create a new clone of this part, we're setting its position to basically be on the right of our original part, which is good. This is what we should do. But the problem is that like, let's say we have this part, and then I make this new part, right? Then the next time that I clone the part, I want it to be on the right of this new part. But what it's doing here is it's still going on the right of this old part. So then it makes another one, and it goes here, and then duplicates again, and then it still goes here, and duplicates again, and still goes here. But I want it to keep going to the right based on the latest part that we just created. So I know this makes little sense, again, like I said, but this is actually a very easy fix. We can just make a variable for it, local current part, okay? At the very beginning, the current part will just be our basic part, right? It's just going to be the default part, so that makes sense. And so then what we're going to do is instead of cloning this part, we're going to clone the current part, right? And so then right after that is done, we can just set the current part equal to the new part that we just created. And so what this should do then is line them up like this. Awesome. And so that is good, but we're not done yet because, okay, it gave us a line, right? But we needed to go up as well. And what is up again? Up is, let's see. So blue arrows, so it's a Z. And this cube is showing us that this Z line is going forward, meaning that this should be a positive Z. Okay, so basically we need to move the parts then to a positive Z direction. And this is where we just have to basically make another loop. So the moment that we actually create this new part, we need to loop through that part and basically give it its own row of new parts, which again, I keep saying this doesn't make sense, but hopefully you're kind of understanding what I'm saying, right? And also I forgot, we don't parent it to the workspace, we parent it to the parts folder that we just created. So here's what I'm going to do, okay? I'm going to say for I because we already used I, so we can't say I again. But obviously we're not using I for anything, which by the way, in case you don't know, when you're looping, I is just going to, or like you can name this whatever you want, right? But I is equal to the number that we're looping through. So so like for example, I could print I, right? Because I know some of you not smart people might not understand, you know, because obviously all of us are smart here. Yeah, I just print 1, 2, 3, 4, and then all the way up to 9. So that's what I is. It's just the number that we're looping through, right? So then I can just say for I again, like, you know, we don't need this, right? For I is equal to 1, and then also let's say 9. We basically have to do the same exact thing, but just all over again, right? So we need one more current part variable. So I can say local new current part, and we'll make this equal to the new part that we just created. So then we're going to say local new part 2 is going to be equal to the new current part clone. And then we're going to do the same thing as we did over here. So new part2.position, but then instead of subtracting, we're going to add, because again, we're dealing with the positive Z. And so then instead of, you know, changing the X axis, we're going to change the Z axis. So part, and again, we're using the part because here we just need to get the size, which all of them have the same size. So it doesn't matter which one we use, size.z. And then new parts2.parent is equal to workspace.parts. And the very last thing to do is just to say new current part is equal to new part 2 that we just created. And hopefully this somewhat works. Oh, beautiful. Okay, it doesn't do it for the first part for some reason, but that's an easy fix. Okay, the fact that like all of these are working, that's good. I like that. You know what? In fact, we actually could just delete this part. Like we could do that. Yeah, so let's just do that. Once all of the loop is done, we'll just say part destroy like so. Awesome. Obviously, that's kind of like a rough, quick fix, but that is good, right? So now we know that that somewhat works. And something as well is that like we can actually change this. Instead of 9, we could set this to be anything, right? So for example, something I've noticed is that this isn't really a cube shape. So what you could do, right, is like instead of setting this to 9, you could set this to like 12 or something, and maybe that's gonna look more like a cube. Sure, okay, yeah, it's kind of there. Maybe we could do 18 right? Let's see, how would this look? Oh yeah, perfect, yeah, that's literally a perfect cube. So I'm thinking what we could do is we could just make a variable for like local num, and then set that equal to whatever you want, right? And then we could make this num, and then, you know, instead of this being 18, this could be num times 2. So I could set this to be 20, for example, right? And then it's just gonna make me a bigger square. And in case you were confused, the reason I'm doing times 2, by the way, right, is because on the very first loop, we're changing the x coordinate, right? And on the x coordinate, the part is 4 studs long. But then on the z coordinate, it is 2 studs long. So because it's 2 studs long, because it's, you know, 50% the size of the x, then the full shape will just be like a rectangle, right? So to make it a full square, we need to ensure that the part gets cloned more on the z-axis, like 2 times more, right? And yeah, perfect. So we've just made a nice ground system. And the cool part here is that we can actually change the part's size here to be literally anything. We can make it like this, right? I don't know, like this little thing, and then it's gonna look like this. So now because, you know, the part is a 1x1 or a 2x2 or whatever, now it's longer in this direction, right? Because the part no longer has a size and balance. But then if I bring the size and balance back, you know, make it 4 studs on this direction, it's gonna, again, look like a cube. So yeah, that's very cool. No matter where we actually position this, it's gonna make the cube anywhere. Yeah, look at that. So okay, so now here's what we need to do, okay? We need to basically give the players different teams. Now this should be obvious enough, right? We have a teams folder, we can make a team, and then let's just make 2 teams, okay? Very simple. We could have team purple and then team green, okay? All right, and so the color of this purple team will, you guessed it, will be purple. I don't even know what shade to give it. Let's just give it magenta, sure. And then green could have a very nice looking bright green color, sure, why not? And so then what I'm thinking we could do is we could add folders for each team. So I'm thinking we could have one folder for the parts that are, you know, just white, that haven't been touched yet. And then we could have other folders for every single team. So we could have a folder for green parts and then a folder for purple parts. Now, look, yes, I could technically, you know, just make the folders myself, but what if your game has a bunch of teams, or maybe you change the teams often and you just don't want to, you know, manually do all of this? We could honestly do all of this inside of a script. So what I'm thinking is we could just make a folder called parts, right? And then inside of that folder, we could have another folder that'll just be called default parts, okay? So this default parts is where all of the cloned parts initially will go. So yeah, so instead of workspace.parts, we'll say parts.default parts, like so, there we go. And then we could make a new script, but I mean, I'll just do it on one script, it's fine. We can loop through the teams, so for I, comma v in game.teams get children, which basically is very similar to this loop, except instead of looping through a number, we're looping through a table, right? So this, it just gives us a table of all of the items inside of the team's thing. And right now, all of the items are just green and purple. And so V is going to be equal to that item. So V is equal to green, and then we finish, you know, the loop, and then V is going to be equal to purple, and then it, you know, does the code, and then it's finished. So what I'll do is I'll say local team name is going to be equal to v.name. Then I'll say local team color is going to be equal to v.team color. And I guess we don't really need the team color actually now thinking about it. And then I'll just say local team folder is equal to instance.new folder. And we'll set, okay, team folder.name is going to be equal to, first is going to be the team name and then parts, like so. So it's going to be whatever name the team is, and then we'll just add parts to the end of it. And then obviously team folder.parent is going to be equal to workspace.parts. And now that I think about it, we actually don't need the team color, so I guess I'll just remove this line. And so if I run the game right now, what's going to happen is that we're going to have parts, default parts, green parts, and purple parts. Wonderful. And if I actually play the game, it should auto-assign me a team. Lovely. So now I'm green. The issue is, though, is that if I actually, you know, walk here, nothing happens, okay? So that's a little concerning. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loop through every single part in the default parts folder, and then just detect, like, okay, whenever the part gets touched, we're gonna basically change its color and then its parent to, you know, like whatever team the player who touched it is on. So hooray, time for another loop. I understand, you know, this is very, very difficult. But I mean, look, honestly, consider this your learning experience, okay? Because every single person expects to be spoon-fed, which obviously is not happening here. I mean, it kind of is, I guess. You're not really doing anything, probably. So yeah, we just need to ensure that V is actually a base part, which it should be, right? But like, if not, V is a base part, then continue end. Meaning, just skip this loop and move to the next one. But, you know, if v is a base part, then I'm going to say v dot touched connect function other part. We got to check if this other part is actually a player. So if not other part dot parent, so here we're assuming that the other part dot parent is a character, right? Because the part must, like, let me share real quick, because a lot of people are kind of confused when I do this, right? And this will give us an error. Yes, I know. Okay, this is our character, okay? And our character has parts. We have a head, we have a hand, we have legs, which will probably be the ones that are actually touching the part. Or do we have feet? We do have feet. Okay, so the feet will probably be the things touching. Okay, whatever, right? So we're gonna get the parent of all of these parts. So whichever part actually touches, you know, the ground, we're gonna get its parent, which should be my character. And every single character has an item inside of them called a humanoid. So to ensure that this is a character, we just need to say find first child of class humanoid. So basically, if the other parts.parent does not have an item that is a humanoid, then we'll just return end. And return in a function, meaning that we'll just end the function. I'm just clarifying just in case you're confused why, like, here we're using continue, which is for loops only, and then why we're using return here, which is for functions. And so yeah, so right now we can just make a variable, local car is equal to other parts.parent. We could get the player, okay, so local player is equal to game.players gets player from character, okay? I don't know why they had to make it such a lengthy function, nor why, like the character should just have a property inside of them called player. Like, I should just be able to do care.player. I should just be able to do that, but I'm not allowed to because Roblox is stupid, blah, blah, blah. But we'll give it the character, okay? And so now that we have the player, which, haha, funny, we can access the player's character, but we can't do, okay, whatever. We need to get the team of the player, okay? So local player team is gonna be equal to player.team. And in fact, I'm actually now realizing that, like, we probably should name the folders the exact same as the team, okay? Yeah, there we go. So now we can just get the actual team. So the very first thing that I want to do is I want to basically change the color of the part. So that should be fairly obvious, right? So I'm gonna say v.color, or I guess I should say brick color, okay? Like, they're basically the same thing. Like, color is just better because you can actually, like, set it to, like, a color3.new, and then it just gives you, like, a whole color wheel to play around with. Like, look at this, right? Like, we have all of these options. But brick color is this. Brick color is when Roblox just gives you their own colors because it's stupid. So yeah, I mean, we might be able to use color, I'm not sure, but I'll just say brick color just to be safe. So we're gonna set the parts brick color. So we're gonna set the parts brick color equal to be the player team dot team color, which is a brick color, yeah. And then what I'm gonna do is I'll set the v.parent. So I'm gonna move the part, right, to the folder that corresponds to the team. So as you may remember at the beginning of the script, we're making these folders, right? So it's gonna be the name of the team and then parts at the end. So we're gonna have a folder called green parts and one called purple parts, which will be inside of the overall parts folder. So I just need to say workspace.parts, and then we need to find the folder that is the, you know, player team's name and has parts like this, right? So this is the name that we're looking for. The problem is that I can't really, like, add this as a dot. Like, if I say dot this isn't going to work, okay? Because here it's going to be looking for dot player team. It's going to be looking for an item called dot player team inside of the parts folder. And obviously that's not what we're doing. We're trying to, the player team is a variable, but in this case, it's not reading it as one. So instead of doing a dot, we have to do square brackets, right? And this is going to work. Again, I'm hoping it's gonna work. And yeah, I mean, let's see how this works. We're green, and then... Perfect, look at that. And if I go to the parts folder, yeah, how cool is that? It just keeps creating the parts. What is inside of the part? Touch in, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there we go. Now we're just making our own little field. And let's see, what if I actually change my player's team to be purple? So let's see, the original lamp team, and then let's just make the team equal to be this purple team, okay? So team is gonna be purple. And now if I start moving again, interesting, yeah, look at that. Okay, will it take away the parts from this folder? I'm really interested, because it should be doing that. Because it's not making new parts, it's just moving them around, right? So if I do it like this, let's see, yeah, this is literally Splatoon, bro. Look at this. And let's see, the more parts that I cover. Yep, look at that. Look at that. See, it's moving them, right? 2, 1, 0. And then all of them are in this folder. Wonderful. And so now that all of this is done, now that we, have all of the folders, we have all of the parts, and all of the parts have a touched event connected, the very last thing we gotta do is just make a while task wait loop, which I'm putting this at the end because this is effectively an infinite loop, okay? If I were to put this at the beginning, it would just, like, not do any of the other code. So it does all the other code first, and then it's gonna move on to this infinite loop that will never stop running. And the goal of this is just gonna be like, when we detect that all of the parts are one color, then we're gonna, make that team win the game. And so initially, we actually need to understand how much parts there are in total, okay? So what I'm thinking we can do is I'll just say local total parts is gonna be equal to workspace.parts.defaultParts get children, and then we're gonna put a hashtag in front of this, which will basically just give us the number of all of the items inside of default parts. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna, again, I know, we're gonna loop through every single folder inside of the parts folder that isn't the default parts folder, okay? So for IV in workspace.parts get children, do, and I guess instead of V, you know what, let's just name it folder, because I feel like that just makes more sense, right? If folder.name is equal to default parts, then continue end. So again, we're just gonna skip that folder. But then if the folder isn't a default parts and it's one of the colored parts, we're just gonna check if the amount of parts in that folder is equal to the total amount of parts, meaning that all of the parts are just one color, meaning one team has one. Which actually I'm just realizing now, I don't even know if that's possible. So I guess what we could do is instead of being 100% covered, let's make it 80% covered, okay? Let's just do that. So I'm gonna say local folder part count is gonna be equal to hashtag folder get children. And then I'll say local percentage is equal to, and then we're gonna make it folder parts count divided by total parts. So like, let's assume that the total parts is like 100 or something, right? And then let's assume that this is 80, right? So let's say it hits our 80% criteria. Then it's gonna say, okay, what is 80 divided by 100? Which, what is that? I think it's like 0.8 or something. So the answer will be a number between 0 and 1, right? So then what we can do is we can just say if percentage is more than or equal to 0.8, then what we can do is we can just, I mean, okay, we could give them like a whole, win screen and everything. We could say like, oh yeah, this team won. But I feel like something that would be funnier is what if we just loop through every single player and then we kick that player. Okay, so player, kick. And then we can just say, I don't know, folder dot, and then the message can just be like, I don't know, folder dot name has 80% of all parts, making them victorious, sure. And let's see, how would this work? So if I do it like this, okay, so it's fully green. Okay, yeah, this will take a little while. So let me actually see. Let me speed up the process. Okay, let me make my character a little faster. Okay, so let's set it to be 50. And now watch as I hopefully get around 80% of these parts colored. Okay, no, now this is taking too long. 0.1. Okay, we just need 10% of everything covered. Okay, so let's see. I mean, I should just be okay to walk in one line, and then it should kick me from the game soon. Oh, awesome, yeah. I know it doesn't seem like it, but right now I am kicked, as it says over here. Green part says 80% of all parts, making them victorious, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so yeah, then let's move this back to being 8. And I'm also thinking the very last thing we can do is just give the player some sort of like user interface, right? Just so they know like how well their team is doing, right? So yeah, here we can just make a text label. We can make it scale, so I don't know, like 0.1 or something. And look, okay, realistically, we would probably want to make it, like colored and everything and, make it look nice. But you know what? For now, let's just script the functionality. And then later we could, if you want to, you could add your own outlines or whatever. So we're going to make a local script, right? Local because it's local to the player. It's not a server script because, we're not changing anything on the server. We need to get the amount of all parts, right? Which the issue is like when the player joins the game, then like other players might already be doing something, right? So we just want to ensure that once we get the total part count, we have it stored somewhere, okay? So what I'm thinking is, what if we just, in the parts folder, what if we just create an attribute that is going to be equal to the amount of total parts. So what I'm thinking is, what if inside of the workspace we can just add like an int value, okay? And then we can name this value total parts value. And so then here what we can do is we can just say workspace, wait for child, total parts value dot value is going to be equal to total parts. And so here we can do the same thing, local total parts value. And so here we can do the same thing, right? Total parts value is equal to workspace, wait for child, total parts value dot value, like so. And yeah, we're just gonna do the same thing, while task dot wait do. I guess we could just get the team of our player. So local player team is equal to game.players local player dot team. And then we can also get our folder, right? So local our folder is equal to workspace wait for child parts, and then another wait for child, which is gonna be player team dot name, and then parts, like so. And yeah, once again, so local our count is going to be equal to the amount of items inside of the folder. So our folder gets children. And we can say local percentage is equal to our count divided by total parts value. Okay, the same thing. And as always, it's going to output it between a number of 1 and 0. But the thing is, I want it to be like an actual percentage, right? I don't want it to be like I don't want this to show like 0.1 or 0.2. I want it to show like 20% or 30% or 40% or something like that. So what I'll do is I'll basically take this value and then multiply it by 100. And so then we can just say script.parents.text, because as you may remember, the script is inside of the text label. So script.parent will be the text label. And I'm thinking right now, we could just make the text a little bigger, right? Something like this. And so then we can just make the text equal to whatever the percentage is, and then just add on a percentage icon at the very end. And so yeah, let's see. Is this gonna work? Awesome, look at that, 0%. Lovely. Obviously, you know, some rounding may be required. Oh, I just saw 5. Some rounding may be required, but look, you know, it works nice. And let's see, can we get to a 10? Because if we saw a perfect 5, we should get a perfect 10. Yes, lovely. There we go, boys. 10% is all mine. How do you feel? Purples. That sounds like a slur, actually. I don't know. Yeah, awesome. Look at this. And then if we were to actually have another player, then he would overwrite my own part. And then we just keep going and going and going until one team ends up being victorious. So, you know what, just for fun, I'm gonna make this into like an actual game. It's gonna be very similar. I'll just make this look a little better. And then I'll also make it so that like this grid is different sizes every single time. So maybe initially it's gonna be like very small, right? And then you join another game and it's like very big. And then you join another game and it's like medium sized or something. And I'll keep these two teams, okay? So I'll keep green and I'll keep purple. So yeah, by the time you're watching, this game should be like actually out. So I'll leave a link to the game in the description. And I'm gonna leave a link to this game in the pinned comment. So, you know, do go and check it out. And another thing to note as well is that like in the pinned comment, I also have my course, which just in case, you know, again, if you're not a developer, you probably don't care. But if you're a developer and, you know, or like, you know, you're thinking of developing and you like my teaching style and you know, want more of my content, then the course costs, I think around like $40 or something. And it's 6.5 hours long, and it covers basically literally every single thing you need to know about Roblox Studio. And also just how to learn as well. Like if you, let's say, need to look something up, right? I'm gonna teach you what you actually need to look up to actually, you know, achieve your desired result. And I am now kicked. Wonderful. Well, I guess this is a fitting end to the video. And so, as always, we are back to basics. Thank you for watching.